Welcome to the She's4Sport and CBC Sports panel, Engaging Women in Sports. My name is Signa Butler. I'm a host here at CBC Sports and your MC for tonight. CBC is proud to co-sponsor this event, and we're happy to champion initiatives that support diversity and the inclusion for women in sport. But we want to move the dial on issues and how it impacts how women participate in, consume, and navigate sports culture. At this time, I'm going to introduce you to a woman you probably already know and our co-sponsor and founder of tonight's event, She's4Sport, and it's Anka Jess, right there. And if you've met her, you know that she's passionate about communications and empowering women. Not to mention just a little bit of a hardcore sports fan, just a little bit. But she's combined over 10 years of communications and media relations experience to launch She's4Sport just a year ago. And her career has led her to provide strategic communications and media relations to support various organizations, including here at the CBC, Manulife, the City of Ottawa, and now with PricewaterhouseCoopers. Ayanka has a degree in English from York University and a diploma in broadcast television from Seneca College. And we're going to turn the podium over to Ayanka for a couple of remarks.
I'll come up since I have my loud. And thanks for the warm welcome, Signa. I am actually really humbled and excited that you guys are all here to participate in a much-needed discussion on how women participate, engage, and consume sports. As you guys know, the event was sold out, and I had up until today people saying, "Can I come? I'll volunteer. Can I come? Is there a waiting list?" So it's nice to see that there is a need and a want for these type of conversations to be had. Although we read stats that say women make up almost half of the sports fan community across 4 pro sports leagues in North America, and they also spend about 80% of all sports apparel dollars, the landscape for women to fully participate in sports like their male counterparts is still a mountain that we are climbing. We've seen positive strides with the U.S. women's national hockey team demanding and gaining equal pay, but we get frustrated when we see sports programs being cut for women or girls because there isn't enough funding, or a lack of media coverage on female athletes across all sports. I created She's4Sports to give women a larger voice in sports, and with this platform, I hope to amplify the conversations that need to be had and work with other organizations like CBC to help push that dial so one day women will have the same resources and opportunities to fully participate in sports like men do. So thank you so much for coming. As Signa said, use the hashtag She's4Sports. We're going to have a great conversation. And, big thank you to Greg Stremlaw, Executive CBC Sports and CBC Olympics. Did I get that right? For inviting me here and also being the co-sponsor of tonight's event. So let's get into the discussion.
Okay, thanks, Ayanka. And of course, before we get to that, we got to introduce you to our power panel. Ayanka's going to moderate our discussion tonight, so we'll get to that. But let's introduce you to, on her left, first up, Teresa Resch, Vice President of Basketball Operations and Player Development with the Toronto Raptors. She's in her 5th season there and has played an instrumental role in overseeing the plans for the team's new practice facility, the BioSteel Center, and as a key member of the team that launched the Raptors 905 G League. She's held various roles in the NBA, including assisting with their international basketball operations department, with their Basketball Without Borders camps, that's across 4 continents. Teresa also assisted in maintaining and expanding the NBA's relationship with the U.S. Department of State's Sports United program, and oversaw league roster management and operations of NBA All-Star Weekend, NBA Draft, and the NBA Draft Combine. She has an MBA in Sports Administration from St. Thomas University and a BA in Business Communications from Augustana College. And if you have a volleyball team, she's itching to play, but she can't commit full-time, but just a couple nights a week. Next up, TSN radio anchor Kayla Grey, although she does do double duty on TV as well. She was also a digital content reporter for TSN.ca during the Toronto Raptors 2016-17 season. After completing an internship with the Toronto Argonauts, Kayla attended and graduated from the College of Sports Media. She's also held roles at Global News Winnipeg as a digital broadcast journalist and at CFTK News in BC as a senior reporter. And like many of us in the media world, she knows what it's like to wake up dead early in the morning when it looks dark like this and leave late at night when it looks dark like this. And also, you can get pretty inspired by her social game as well. I've learned a few tips by watching her. Next up, Brenda Irving, one of our great hosts here at CBC Sports. The three-time Gemini Award nominee has been a member of the CBC Sports team since 1995. She brings a wealth of knowledge, experience, and passion to her role as commentator on CBC Sports' Road to the Olympic Games. Brenda has covered 9 Olympic Games for CBC, including her most recent role as play-by-play commentator for gymnastics in Rio 2016. And over the course of her career here at CBC, she's often described as a utility player. She's a sideline reporter, she's a play-by-play, she is a features producer. And she's covered a wide variety of sports as well: equestrian, tennis, judo, Nordic combined, figure skating, snowboarding, skiing, multiple Grey Cup championships and Stanley Cup finals. She's also covered 3 FIFA World Cups as well. Hitting cleanup in our power panel is Lauren Simeson. Lauren is the Senior Manager of National Programs with the Jays Care Foundation, where she's responsible for implementing the organization's national partnerships. She has years of experience designing and delivering sport development programs for marginalized youth across Canada, and currently she's overseeing Jays Care's Girls at Bat program. Her prior work has included innovative projects with a wide range of sports organizations and partners, including the MLSE Foundation, the National Lacrosse League, the Canadian Women's Hockey League, the NHLPA, dozens of First Nations, the Ontario Ministry of Child and Youth Services, the Ontario Ministry of Aboriginal Affairs, the Public Health Agency of Canada, and with Right to Play. There's many journeys along the way, and if you've spoken to Lauren and you speak to her tonight, you'll know she's very passionate about what she does. She holds a BA in political science from Iona College in New Rochelle, New York, where she competed as a Division I athlete in cross country and track and field. And she might earn my nod as favorite panelist, as she did go to my alma mater, St. Mary's University in Halifax. So welcome to everybody here. And as I mentioned, Ayanka is our moderator tonight, so she's going to pick up this great conversation that we're going to have. We're going to have a couple questions afterwards as well.
So I'll start with Brenda. You know, you've been in the industry for a really long time in broadcasting, and you've probably seen a lot, experienced a lot. You know, what has changed in terms of how you see women either being represented in sports or consuming sports?
Well, when I was growing up, it was rare to find a woman that you could have a sports conversation with. And I used to have one friend, and her and I, when we were in elementary school, were collecting hockey cards, going to local hockey games, just anything to do with sports. So we were known as, at that time, you say we were tomboys. But really, she was the only one for a long time that a woman where I could engage in, have a sports conversation with. And everyth's changed. Like, it's amazing. So that was, I guess, 40-some years ago.
Date yourself.
Yeah. But no, now it's so different. I mean, I even look at, the participation of, I played on the high school, volleyball and basketball teams, and there were very few women who were athletically inclined, and it was hard to find a lot of women at that time that were really passionate about either participating in sports or engaging in conversations about sports. But now, when I go into the schools and I see what's happening, I see the level of women's sports in high schools and in elementary schools. It's just grown exponentially. I just can't believe how different it is. And it has, in my eyes, become very, equal to the opportunities that are available for men and boys in the educational system. But when, for example, when I got out of college, my goal was to work for Hockey Night in Canada. And at that time, I applied for some sports jobs, and I didn't get any of them. So I got into the next best thing, which was into news. So I was a weekend news reporter anchor. And then it was around 1989 where I started to even notice a few female faces on television or on the radio, and that's when I made the jump over to sports. But my first job when I went into the Montreal Canadiens dressing room. It was probably, I don't know, 1991. And at that time, the equipment managers used to yell out, "Woman, there's a woman's going to come in," And now that would look so ridiculous, right? Because there's so many, there's probably at least, I don't know, a quarter of women going into professional locker rooms now. But yeah, you were an oddity, and it was a little bit tough at first. There were some sexist remarks. The first time I ever went in a dressing room, and one of the players said something to me, which I won't repeat. But then there was Brian Scrudlin, this player at the end. He goes, "Come here. That guy there, he's an ass." He goes, "Don't listen to him. You're welcome in this room." But anyways, yeah, it was different than it would be now for sure.
And Teresa, I'll get you in on this. You've obviously played varsity volleyball, and you've made your way, to working in the front office at a very high level. From your perception of wanting to get into sports back then to where you are now, how are you seeing the landscape for women in sports?
First, I want to say thank you very much for having us. Yeah. I think this is great. This is great to have this conversation, so thanks so much. But not that it hasn't changed, but I think my exposure to it has changed. So playing collegiate volleyball in the States was a great experience. And from that, I mean, I didn't want to work in sports. I grew up in a farming community. I thought I was going to be either, take over the farm or work in some form of agriculture, go to University of Minnesota, St. Paul campus, go Gophers. But I was from a very small town, and we happened to be very successful. So then the opportunity to play at the next level of sports came across my desk, and I took it, and I loved it. And from there, my eyes really widened to, wow, you can actually have a career in sports if you're not done playing. Because I didn't even think I was going to play in college, much less there's no professional women's volleyball league. So I knew my career was done after 4 years in college. There's no way I was making an Olympic team. So I think for me, the perspective was really just broadening my horizons. And I think a lot of times women, and not even women, but just people from areas where they're not maybe exposed to the opportunity, don't even see themselves in some of these roles. And I think that's kind of our job for those of us who have experience and have been able to be exposed to the different opportunities. It's really our job to make sure that we continue that exposure and try to reach those people who maybe don't even know about it or have never even thought that, wow, that's maybe something I could do. So I think I answered your question.
You did.
Okay.
And I'm also going to get Kayla in on this. Obviously you're up and coming broadcaster, and you're definitely kicking down doors and doing your thing in the sports industry, specifically around basketball. What's your perspective on sort of the landscape right now for women in sports? But for your angle, maybe it would be broadcasting, and in terms of diversity or challenges.
Yeah. I think that I'm very blessed that with the Raptors, you see Teresa there and you see other women there. I think, like we were talking, that there's like 10 people or so involved in management and front office that are women, and you don't see that. And, when you're walking in the locker room, sometimes you feel as though when you're like the only, you feel pretty lonely in there. So when you see another woman, you're like, hey, or you give each other the nod, and you want to get to a point where you don't have to do that, but it is super encouraging when you do see that. And when I'm going into rooms, I think that one of my priorities is just making sure that I come correct every single time. I think that one of my biggest fears is that I'm not being taken credible. I think that that's a huge challenge that women have right now in this industry is, some people are like, oh, well, she's just a pretty face there and she could just deliver the news and she could read off the prompter and that's good because it looks good. And I don't want to just look good. I want to have things to say, and I want the things that I'm saying to be powerful, and I want the stories that I tell to translate to everyone. And I think that that's the challenges that I find as a female. But when you look at like a Lisa Salters, a Doris Burke, like they've kind of like knocked down the doors, but not only knocked down the doors, they've looked behind them to make sure that other people are coming behind them as well. So I think that that's very important in the broadcasting industry.
And Lauren, getting you on this conversation about, looking at who's coming behind us, the next generation. I know the Jays Care Foundation is doing a lot of different programming for girls in baseball. So can you talk to us about that a little bit?
Yeah, of course. We touched on it a little bit during the intro, but one of the programs I help to oversee at Jays Care is the Girls at Bat program. and it's our signature program for girls only, and it's designed to make playing baseball feel fun and feel safe for not only the girls involved, but also the women that we train to be leaders in the programming too. So a big part of the program is to identify spaces where girls don't have a lot of opportunities, and then even more so don't have a lot of opportunities to play baseball. And we'll go to communities and we'll train a group of women in the communities, and often they're moms in the communities who just want their daughters to have opportunities, but sometimes it might be at a Boys and Girls Club or an organization that's working with marginalized youth that wants to integrate baseball for girls into their programming. And we train them on how to really integrate life skill development into baseball. So instead of just throwing and catching and doing a simple baseball drill, we teach them to have conversations with the girls in their programs and to help the girls really feel like they're in a safe space. The program is sort of a 9-week program or a 9-step program, and every week is themed. And for example, the first week is all about reimagining your girl world. So girls get a chance to talk about what's really scary about being involved in a girls only program and what they need to do to make it a really safe and empowering space for other girls, and how they can support each other to have success in the program, to have fun as well. So we never care if any girl gets better at baseball in our program. That is never our goal. Our goal is for girls to feel safe and loved and respected, and to really feel empowered and supported by role models that are working with them.
And let's touch a little bit on fan engagement. You know, you hear that constant sort of stereotype about the pink it, shrink it, and that, you know, leagues aren't getting it right when they're trying to market to women. Can you talk to me a little bit, Teresa, about what the Raptors are doing to sort of engage women, whether it's having a special, you know, women in business night, or just having women at the game? You know, there was maybe a code that they can sign up for to get a discount on a ticket, but just really treating women as just fans and not, you know, that pink it, shrink it model that sort of we've been seeing in the past.
No, of course. And I think your point is right there. We don't have a women in basketball night. We don't have those because almost half of our fan base is already women. So it's just a matter of engaging them. So why are, you know, making sure there's some people from the global partnership team here. You know, when they get a partner on board and they're thinking about activating, you know, how come every activation we do is towards men 25 to 35? Like, why don't we include the women? Because half of our audience, half of our fan base is women, because we know that, because we have the research now to know that they're consuming sports and the Raptors at equal pace as men. So I think that we've actually already started that kind of going away from that, because we know that that's not genuine, and a lot of the women who follow sports are put off by that, just like we just mentioned right here. Yeah. So we're trying to find new and exciting ways to connect with them, and I think just doing a better job of telling the story is where we have to start, and that obviously is with broadcast and media and our social channels and all those things. And I think we're doing a good job of going towards that, but we obviously have a ways to go, because it just takes time. You know, when you're historically, you know, the Raptors are 20 years old now, so 22 years old, I guess now. So for 20 years, all of our marketing has been towards men. So it takes a while to make that shift, but I think we're doing a good job of going down that path. And you'll see more and more initiatives that are either unbiased, like it's not towards a specific gender or demographic at all, or it's actually targeted at women. And I think that that's only going to happen more and more, because people are understanding that the women are really a powerful audience that have a lot of buying power and a lot of influence power, not only on the sports teams, but in the world in general. So I'm not on the marketing team, so I can't say specifically what we're doing, but it's definitely things that we're doing and going down that path. And I know from MLSE side, we are launching women's initiatives specifically to try to tell the story better about the impact that women are having at MLSE and the value that we're bringing, and just I think the impact and like Kayla was saying, is you see us all there now we need to start telling our story a little bit better.
Brenda, talking about stories, you know, sometimes when I talk to people, they just say, well, there's who is the average sports fan as a woman? Who is she? Could she, you know, do we know exactly who that is? We don't see realistic stories out there about the female athlete, because sometimes when you're watching, depending on the sport, it might be looking at her outfit or looking at her face. You know, we're not telling her true story. So how are you doing that in some of the reporting that you've done in terms of being able to expand on that athlete and tell their full story?
Well, I think that CBC Sports is unique in the sense that's our core business, is Olympic sport. And because Canadians do so well, and it's usually the women that win a majority of the medals, at least at the last games, and maybe, anyway. So if you look at our coverage any weekend, we have Road to the Olympic Games, which usually airs Saturday, sometimes Sunday. It's going to be at least 50% of the coverage will be on female sport. But I mean, we just tell their stories, and male, female. I just got back last night from going to Edmonton, and Caitlin Osman, who's the reigning world silver medalist in figure skating. So it's just about telling her story and the unique relationship that she has with her coach. And I think it's through those features that I do that people get to know the athletes better. And I think if you're trying to engage some women, more women, to watch like our coverage, it's through those stories, because I think it goes for the men too, because a lot of people don't know anything about maybe Kaylee Humphreys, a bobsledder. So by watching the feature, you know her story. You have someone to root for. And I think that's important that we do that, because we're trying to sell something that most people don't know very much about, and that's Olympic or amateur sport. But I think those sorts of personal stories grab a female audience as well as a male audience to want to watch that particular sport.
And Lauren, I'll get you in on this conversation. We talk about the sports fan. There are young girls from everywhere in Canada who are interested in sports. It's really a model of wanting to be more inclusive. So, you're engaging a lot of different girls in different neighborhoods who like sports. Can you talk to me a little bit about the programming you're doing to engage young girls who are from Native communities?
Yeah, we have a program. It's running in the James Bay Coast in Northern Ontario with 11 communities, and it was sort of born out of the suicide crisis in Attawapiskat, and girls stepping up to local leaders in their communities as well as to government officials and saying, like, the adults in our community are doing so much and they're doing too much, and we want to do something, but we don't know how to do it. So we partnered with the Ministry of Children and Youth Services, and we've partnered with a ton of organizations and we're doing what we call a collective impact project. We're working together to really empower girls in their community, to help them build their facilitation skills and help them build enough confidence so that some of them can even step outside their doors someday. The first step for them is to get outside their home and to organize events in their communities. There's 100 youth champions right now who are engaged in that program. They come together 3 times a year. They play tons of baseball, but they also get tons of leadership development as well. And from this, they have gone back to their communities and they've run almost 100 events for kids in their communities. So the goal of that program is to really help these girls feel like leaders, to a place where they can go back home and they can engage younger kids in their communities so that everyone's engaging in healthier behaviors and that everyone has something to do that's productive and healthy.
I'm just going to read a question here that we got last night on Twitter from Anne-Marie Zawodsky, who was a good eager beaver. She sent me 6 questions. I'm gonna, yeah, because she couldn't make it, so I'm gonna ask you guys this one. Oh, you're here! Oh, thank you! I wasn't sure if you could make it or not. Good to see you in person. What are your questions? You had the one about being motivated as an intern and what helps them stay motivated to get their first job. But yeah, do you want me to read it? Okay. She's asking, and I'm going to ask all of you guys, what helped you stay motivated when you felt discouraged while pursuing an internship or your first job in the industry? Kayla, do you want to start?
I think what kept me motivated was my why. Always remembering why you wanted to get into this in the first place. And just realizing that it's a process and understanding that you're going to get knocked down a ton of times, but it's not how you get knocked down or when you get knocked down, it's how you bounce back and collect yourself and keep pushing. So I think that just remembering your why and why you want to do things. And you know what? Sometimes you're in the middle of things and you're just like, man, this is not for me. And that's totally okay to just step away. Like I remember Being in Winnipeg with Global, one of my first months there, they went into the Red River to find someone who had fallen overboard. And it's crazy. So they went to find the person and they could not find their body, but they found 3 other bodies. And for me, I just felt like heavy. And some people live for that because it's like it's stories and like, you know, and granted because they just love news. And for me, of course, it was like one of my first jobs out of school, and I wanted to like learn my chops and get as much experience as I wanted to do, but it was just so heavy, and sports was what I wanted to do. So I think that just going through those experiences and kind of looking at how you can get better in your own lane was something that I had to learn to do. And some people could look at me sideways, but you got to do what you got to do for yourself to make yourself happy. So I went to a smaller market. I said, you guys don't have a sports segment. I can do that. And I did it, and I was just completely happy. And then that's when TSN came calling. So just remember your why and don't shut out anything that might steer you into different directions.
Lauren, did you want to add something to this?
Yeah, I was telling somebody this earlier today. Before I worked at Jay's Care, I worked for an organization called Right to Play, and I came into the organization during the 2010 Vancouver Olympics, and I came on as a receptionist that was supposed to work 1 hour an afternoon, but I really wanted to work there, and I just went every single day until somebody decided to give me a job. I would show up every day, and I'd be like, okay, I'm ready for some more work, and I did everything from data entry, which I'm totally not qualified or excited about, to everything I am excited about, which is engaging youth. And it's funny when Kayla's talking about that a little bit, I always wanted to do something that mattered. I knew that enough, but it's really hard to figure out what you want to do when you're young. There's lots of opportunities, and it's really hard to get cool jobs, and it's hard to get good jobs or a job, period, often. So I just decided I was going to show up every day at an organization, and it worked out in my favor. But the stories that you're talking about that are kind of heavy for you are a lot of the kids that we're working with. A lot of the kids that are involved in our programs are kids that are facing multiple barriers in their lives. They're living at or below the poverty line, and they don't have tons of opportunities, and they've sort of been kicked so many times in their life. So sport is that hook. Sport is that vehicle for us. It's obviously baseball, but I know there's tons of people here from MLSC as well who can use different sports. And it's just that connection. It's sort of what we call the universal language that everybody speaks. It's a way to bring people together. It's a way to help make people feel good. And it's a way to kind of escape from your life at times for a lot of these kids. So that's sort of the stories that I hear through our programs, whether it's a kid living in Toronto community housing that falls in love with summer day camp because of our programs, or a girl up in a Northern First Nation that is now leaving her home because she's found this program, or a kid in our Challenger baseball program, which is a program for kids with disabilities who has started to gain more independence through a program. Those are sort of the things that drive me and motivate me every single day, and like you said, that's kind of my why too.
Brenda, did you want to answer that one?
Yeah, I mean, I think only once really in my career to ever feel discouraged. That was my first job. I moved to Rosetown, Saskatchewan, which was a town of, I don't know, maybe 2,000 people. And I was so excited about my new job. And I get there, I'm going to be, you know, the reporter at their Kindersley station. And I get there and I find out not only am I going to be the reporter, but I'm also going to be the receptionist. I'm also going to be doing sales, and I'm also the janitor. So at that point, I wonder, what the heck am I doing? But really, that's the only time when, you know, I wasn't motivated, and I kind of questioned what I was doing. But yeah, I just, same thing. I just love, it's like going to school every day, whether it's news or sport. You're always learning something new. You're always, you know, meeting new people. And yeah, sport has always been my passion. So there's nothing better than that.
Do you want to answer that?
Yeah, of course.
Go ahead.
So I think in this industry, doing an internship, and I mean, you can't even call it internships. You're literally just giving your time to people and organizations because you just love it, is something we all have to go through. And I think that's what also bonds us a little bit, is we all have these shared experiences of just feeling like you're just at the end and it's never going to happen. I think we were just talking about this earlier. And one story that I've told, so stop me, well, don't stop me, but some of you have heard this already, is I was lucky enough in Joburg, so it must have been 2008 or 9. We started bringing WNBA players to also serve as clinicians to the Basketball Without Borders camps that we ran across the world. So what a Basketball Without Borders camp is you take a continent and then the FIBA organizations of every country sends the top talent. So 14 to 17-year-old boys come to the camp, 1 or 2 from every country, and then NBA players and coaches come and serve as clinicians, teaching them basketball skills, but there's also a life skills component as well, because a lot of these players are never going to play above college, but they're going to be the future leaders of those countries. So that was always great, but it was always just boys. So they started bringing WNBA players to serve as clinicians, no girls, but at least players. So one year we were able to bring Jennifer Azzi, and Jennifer Azzi played at Stanford in the 90s. She was Player of the Year. She really resurrected that program and kind of started on this path to success that they've had in more recent years. And as part of that, there wasn't any girls at the camp, so we went and visited a girls' team there. And she told this story, and I saw her like 20 years, not 20, I'm not that old, just more recently, and she actually didn't even remember telling this story, but she said it was true. So she talked about how she wanted to make the Olympics. It must have been 92, I'm going to say 92, and she was the last person cut. So it was literally like the day before they go to the Olympics, she gets cut from the team. So she goes and her team competes and she's not there. And she was just devastated, as you can imagine. Like, we're all into sports. Like, can you imagine that? So she gave up the game. She didn't play. This was after her college career. So she didn't play for like a year. And then she finally like picked up a ball again just because she missed it so much, right? So she started playing again. So 4 years later, she makes the team. And she's kind of old at this point to be an Olympic athlete, but she makes the team. She goes, she wins the Olympic gold medal. That was in 92. So she won the gold medal in 92, I think. The years get all messed up. Anyways, so she wins the gold medal. And the moral of that story is she thought she had lost her only chance to get a gold medal when she got cut from that team. But that team, they won the bronze. So what she thought was her gold medal opportunity, it wasn't even it. So it's kind of in retrospect, because by that time I already had my first job. But I always tell to people, like, when you just feel like you cannot stand it any longer, you can't volunteer any longer, you've had enough, you just want to give up, like, just know that the opportunity that you just missed probably was just your bronze medal, and the gold is still yet to come.
That's a lovely story.
Right?
It
It was really good, and I also think that it's so telling that, like, Jennifer told that story just because that was her story, and she didn't even remember telling it. You know, she didn't even remember sharing that story with us. And it made such a huge impact on me. I've probably told that story hundreds of times to different people.
No, it's a great
so
story.
Go ahead and share it again. It's true. You know, do your research so you get the years right. But it's a good story. But I think it's also interesting when you're talking about the impact that you have. I think that also when you're interning, you're trying to just get your foot in the door. But the impact that you can have on people, like, really keeps you motivated to keep going. Just this last week, 2 days ago, so I was on the road with the team, and our last stop was Denver. And I was walking out of the gym after practice, and this tall guy comes up. He's like, "Teresa, how are you?" I'm like, "Great, doing awesome." Like, no idea who this kid is. I give him a big hug, and then he starts talking, and I'm like, "Oh my gosh, it's Dechi." Dechi was a camper at BWB in 2006, and a year later he was my like interpreter when we did a camp in Senegal. And he's from Senegal, and he had gone to the camp. He came back to kind of volunteer and help out, and from there he went to college. He went to school in the States. He worked at Grand Canyon University in Phoenix, and he just had gotten a job with the Denver Nuggets, and it was like, oh my gosh, here's this kid who's this kid that I met 10 years ago, and he's like living his dream. Like, how motivating is that?
No,
So good stories.
Yeah, from all of you. I don't know. my thing. But I'm going to segue a little bit onto social media. Obviously, we're living in a digital age right now. Some people feel social media is a hindrance. Some people like it. But I mean, when we look at a team like the women's U.S. soccer team or the women's hockey team, and how they were able to use social media to really amplify really obviously important issues like pay equity to get the outcome that they have now. Like, can you guys talk a little bit about sort of the power of social media to engage women and to really bring those issues to the table? Because unfortunately, through the traditional outputs, they weren't being heard, and they had to go on the digital side to get their voices heard. So whoever wants to take that.
I mean, you listen to a lot of sport radio. I mean, TSN is doing a good job at having female representation on the radio, but you listen to the fan, and it's so intimidating for women. You never hear a female voice on. I listen all the time to 590 and to TSN radio, but it's a very intimidating place, and I think social media allows women to have conversations, because I would find it intimidating to phone into the call-in shows or participate that way, because it's so male-dominated. The only time maybe the last time I heard a female voice on there is they had some WWE female wrestler on, and anyway. But other than that, you don't hear those voices, and I think social media is a way for women. I think they're a little bit more comfortable to engage that way in conversations about sport.
Do you want to add something to that one?
Yeah, I definitely agree. I was going to have to say, too, in terms of the programs that we do and the kids that we work with, social media can also be a bit of a dangerous space for girls. So we do tons of programming and tons of training on how to really create a safe space when it comes to social media as well. And that's gone really far in a lot of our programs, and those programs are specific to girls and women that we work with. But I would say as well, in terms of us being able to celebrate a lot of the kids, particularly the girls in our program, social media is definitely our platform that we do that. Every couple of weeks we post an all-star story, and the all-star story just demonstrates what incredible kids are doing in their communities, and they get to be posted all over the Blue Jays Twitter and Facebook and Instagram and everything that they follow every single day. So it allows them to feel really good about themselves, to see sort of a whole team and a whole country backing them as incredible, unstoppable kids in their communities.
Kayla, do you want to add something to that?
Yeah, and I think when it comes to women on social media, a big thing is accessibility. There are a lot of games that aren't broadcasted simply because it's a female sport. So where do we go when we want to find out how certain teams are doing, how certain athletes are performing? We go on social media, and we have to look at research, because simply we're just not getting the spots on national broadcasts. So I think that it's a huge place for us to kind of exchange information, and it is a dangerous place, when you are a woman out there and you see on Twitter just the trolls and the mean people. But I just can't tell you the amount of DMs and, side messages about like, how's this guy doing tonight? Like, man, pulling for this one, or just questions. It's like a safe space for us to just kind of engage and, like you say, not feel so intimidated calling in to, like, when you're calling into a radio show, it could be like 3 men up there. And just because they hear the tone of your voice, eyes are rolling. What does this one have to say? They're waiting for you to stutter. They're waiting for you to make a mistake. Whereas you can just ask and answer directly and give your opinions freely with other women. And I think that that's where I find social media so special.
Teresa, do you want to add to that?
Sure, yeah, I think the biggest thing is, and we're living in the social media world. Like, I see like my nieces and nephews and just friends, kids, and like how they interact and what their high school, middle school experience is like, or even some of my colleagues who are just like 10 years younger than me. Like, their experience growing up is completely different than ours. And I think what social media has done is it's done two things. It's made the world a lot smaller. So if you are trying to find somebody or something that you have something in common with, it's a lot easier, which I think is great. And the other thing is it's given a platform to share your voice or your opinion to everyone, which can be dangerous, as you already said, but which also can be very, very powerful, which we've seen in so many ways in sports and otherwise. So I think that social media is only going to continue to change and evolve, and I think that we're all just going to be trying to keep up with it. And honestly, if you can be a game changer in that field, you're golden. Because I know I'm already way behind the loop, and I like to think I'm pretty young, but I think it is interesting how much social media and just media in general has changed. And I think the biggest change I've seen is it gives everyone a platform, and I think that that's great. It's been totally abused and been used the wrong way, but I think the fact that it exists is so exciting, and it gives everybody a voice. And just how do you use that, and how do you amplify it?
You know, Brenda, Kayla talked about the reason why some women go to Twitter or Facebook or social, because they can't find the coverage on national, broadcasters on stations. And, we did see the numbers with the FIFA Women's World Cup. 750 million television viewers watched the FIFA Women's World Cup. So we have the data and the numbers, but why is it so hard to convince, whether it's executive producers, to go and cover, women's sports? Like, the numbers are there. What's the problem?
I think it's like low-hanging fruit. Like, people, it's just easy for a lot of the radio stations, TV stations. I'm old school for calling them stations, but anyways, for them to do the top four sports, right? The big four. Big four, are we five now? But anyways, it's more difficult, and it would be a little bit more of a risk. But I mean, you listen again to the different radio stations, and when do you ever hear about women's sports or amateur sport? And I think it's easy, it's cheap to just go to the traditional sports and talk about that and have panels about that and ad nauseum talk about it. And I always wonder, why can't even once a day they bring in, Kaylee Humphreys, our bobsledder, two-time Olympic medalist or Olympic champion. Why can't they once in a while do something a little bit for them unorthodox? And that's the only way that we're going to get more people, talking about women's sport, because largely that's where women ply their trade, is at the Olympic Games. So I think it's really unfortunate, and I don't know what you do to change the perception of the people. Yeah, maybe somebody else has some ideas. Do you have any ideas?
Great. I was going to ask you, because I know the WNBA came out with lots of numbers in terms of the playoffs and coverage and viewers and people on social are really just amplifying, the game and tweeting about their players. So in terms on the basketball side of things, how are you looking at this issue?
It's interesting because I think the people that I follow on social and just in general just love ball so much that they check for both. There's certain moments where I find myself even, and I'm guilty of it, of not checking in on WNBA games because it just so happens with seasons and other obligations. And that's where I have to put the onus on me to be more aware and to check myself and be like, hey, there's good basketball on both sides, right? And I think another thing too is demanding more and making people feel uncomfortable about not having or including women in conversations. I'll throw our team under the bus. We're all friends here. I don't care. Yesterday, I was listening to our station, and the only time I heard a woman come up or mention a woman was Kate Upton and how hot she was and how lucky Justin Verlander was. The time before that, Eugenie Bouchard, how hot she is, and I love her SI cover. And that is because there's so many males on our station in general, or even in the sports field, that just don't get challenged, that don't feel uncomfortable saying these things, that don't feel uncomfortable spending 5 minutes talking about why someone's boobs look so great, or why so-and-so's wife is better looking, or why this athlete's better looking than another better athlete, because they're not challenged. So you have to send emails, and you have to be the one. And you know what? Sometimes people can look at me and be like, oh, she's in the room, guys. Tone it down, change what you're saying, let's switch subjects. But if I have to be the one to eventually make it a space where they don't say it because you shouldn't say it, because you should probably just try to be a better human being, then so be it.
Does anybody want to add to that? Anyone want? Or did she just drop the mic?
Yeah, well said.
I want to shift a little bit to, there is a campaign. I don't think I know in the NBA where I think it's lean in, where men lean in. But even in other industries, you'll hear women who have gone through their career or are still navigating their career say that they've had mentors. So can you talk about some of the men that have been that have helped you in your career to get to where you are now, and sort of that support that you got?
To me specifically?
Yeah, for men who get it, who want to see women in sports and they understand.
It's funny because you're sort of talking a lot about how you're in male-dominated industries, and I work for a foundation, and before that I worked for another foundation. It's a very, very female-dominated industry, and before I get to that, there can be tension amongst women and females as you see other women succeeding. It's sort of the analogy, I was saying this to somebody earlier, it's like crabs in a bucket. As you see somebody else succeeding, you're trying to pull them down and you're trying to beat them out. So both the two organizations I've worked for, Right to Play and Jay's Care, we've done a ton of work in creating a space where women are really celebrating each other, and someone else's success is seen as a team success as opposed to an individual success. So I feel proud and I feel excited to work in places like that where women are really empowered. But in terms of men who have supported me in my career, I've had a boss in both organizations. It's actually the same. It's kind of weird. A lot of people go between the two organizations, but he's somebody who gets it, and he's somebody who just wants people to work hard for him, and he doesn't care if you're a female or a male. He's there to support you and to help guide you through your career at the same time, and he's been a big mentor in my life, and there's been tons of people. I have an incredible dad. I have an incredible brothers who are always there to support me as well, and who have never made me feel like being a woman is anything less than what they are, or that I should have any less opportunities. I've been given all the same opportunities as they've been given. So I feel really lucky to have a lot of female mentors in my life, but I also feel really lucky to have male mentors who help me feel like it's no different to be who I am.
No, I really haven't. I've had a lot of support throughout my career. Like, I remember going to the Montreal Forum and Dick Irvin and Danny Gallivan. I remember Dick Irvin said, just don't let them see you sweat. And, they were very supportive of, me being Montreal Canadiens reporter. And when I came to CBC Sports, my mentor was Steve Armitage. And he kind of took me under his wing and taught me how to do what I do as a play-by-play analyst. And no, I have had nothing but support from the men that I've worked with. And it's only been fairly recently, like we had Signa and others that have come along, but really there haven't been many women who've directly touched my career path up until, the last 10 years or so.
Kayla?
When I went to the College of Sports Media, Jim Van Horn was my teacher. He's like a day oneer from TSN. Very noticeable mustache that he just shaved off, and I yelled at him for it. But anyways, so he was my teacher kind of coming in to things. And I just remember being in school one day, and it was like a broadcasting thing, and you have to kind of read an update, and and I'm shaking and I'm so nervous and I'm fumbling, and I was also one of the few women in the class, but definitely the only black girl in the class. And I just remember just feeling so uncomfortable and just insecure about it, and I didn't own it as yet, and I wasn't owning my voice. And I just sent him an email, and I was like, it's like I'm feeling really discouraged. I'm a woman, I just feel like maybe you're a little bit harder on me, and I'm messing up. And he just brought me into his office. He's like, I don't care what you are. You can be a woman, you can be a man. Kayla, you're good, and you have good potential, and that's what I'm trying to bring out of you. And I think that that's something that has always stuck with me, and we keep in touch years after I've graduated, and I always go back to him and stuff, because I think when you look for mentors, they don't care about kind of you being the next woman or the next Black female, it's about you just being the best you that you can be. And I think that that's what I look for, like with mentors, and I've been so fortunate to have those in sports and also in the news industry.
I've had a lot of great mentors. My current mentor, my boss, Masai Ujiri, I'm not sure if you guys listen to Bill Simmons' podcast, but the last thing he said was hire women. Like, how much more of an endorsement can you have, right? So I consider myself very lucky to work for him. But I think even when I first got started, I worked for a now defunct Division II conference, and just the commissioner at the time, he just really took me under a wing and told me what I needed to hear, not what I wanted to hear. That really got me started on the path I'm on now. I think the biggest thing just with mentorship is, and you mentioned lean in. I think unfortunately we don't do that enough. And if you read Sheryl Sandberg's book, it's like a scientific fact, unfortunately, that men will apply for a job they're not even qualified for, where women will look for ways to make themselves unqualified for the same job or something around that. And it's true. I've done it so many times. It's like these people come and push me to do something. They believe in me, but I don't even believe in myself. Like, why? So I think we all have to just make sure that we recognize the people that we're working with that need that little extra push and become mentors ourselves, whether it's women or men or whoever it is. Like, if you see talented people, make sure that you're telling them that and making sure that you're pushing them to go towards what you know that they can achieve, because as their manager and as their mentor, you're the one that really is taking on that challenge for them.
And last question from me for you guys each is, we see the landscape, we see some opportunities, we see newsrooms changing a bit to include more women. We see programs now that are targeted to young girls. But I mean, from what I'm hearing from other women in sports, we still got a way to go. So what would you guys like to see changed in the next 5 to 10 years when it comes to engaging women in sports? Anybody?
I just think it has to happen in the elementary schools. I think that my son is 12, so I've seen a lot of what goes on, and just right away I see some parents and some teachers, who gets the opportunities or who gets to go. They have a few Jays tickets. Who's getting to go? I just think we have to engage women in sport earlier. Like someone said to me, it's like someone threw a party and they forgot to invite me. When they think about sports, it's like they just don't get it because they weren't in that world or exposed to sports, whether as a fan or as an athlete from a young age. And it's harder to engage them when they're 20, 30, 40, 50, right? So I think it's important to start some of the work that you're doing, which is great, and spreading that, even more across the country.
I would definitely have to agree. One of the statistics that drives our program is that if a girl hasn't participated in organized sport by the time she's 10 years old, there's only a 10% chance that she's going to be physically active as an adult. So that is sort of the why for our program, and the why we even designed the Girls at Bat program in the first place. And the number one reason why girls drop out of sport is because it's just not fun. So our goal, and I work for a baseball team, but I recognize that baseball might not be the most exciting sport in the world. So our job is to always make baseball really fun and to make baseball really active. And it's sort of like when you're a kid and your mom hides the broccoli in your food. We sort of hide the baseball and hide the life skill development into a really fun atmosphere. So I would have to agree, starting with kids, our focus is girls under the age of 10, because those are the girls that are dropping out of sport. And at the same time, make it a space that's comfortable and a space that's just for them too. That's something I've learned a lot in the different places I've worked and the different communities I've visited along the way, is that girls are most likely to engage when they're with their female peers. And you get to that age when you're nervous around boys or other people in your communities, so they can really express themselves in a positive way when they're with their female counterparts.
Yeah, I would mirror the two about starting young and focusing on wording and how important wording is when you're talking to young girls and building them up, and not handing them the pink dress and letting them choose what they want, right? I just remember writing a story and following Erica Weeb, who's a wrestler, to a high school. And it was these bright, brilliant group of girls, like just fun, but they couldn't compete because they were practicing in the boys' old uniforms. Stinky boys' old uniforms that were just handed down. And that's just sort of where they wanted to. They were so eager, and it didn't really matter to them because they were doing what they wanted to do, and they were engaging with one another, and they were wrestling, and that was all that they wanted to do outside of school. So what Erica did was she teamed up with Playtex, and they had like a contest, and then they came in and they got these girls brand new uniforms and to compete in, and just like high school girls just bawling their eyes out, and just standing there and being like, wow, like this is so important. Like, and I asked one, I'm like, obviously I know why it's so emotional, but just tell me like why it's so emotional. She's like, Kayla, like you don't get it. Like they thought of us. Like someone thought of us. And I think that that's very important too, like especially when you're young or when you're looking at younger people or whether you have kids, is just think of them and think of the young girls coming up and do what you can to just empower them as much as possible.
Teresa, did you want to add to that? We didn't even touch on the Raptors camps for girls, basketball camps. I don't know if you want to add that.
Oh man, the Raptors basketball camp for girls is just the tip of the iceberg.
I know.
No, for real, MLSC, I think I don't know if I talked about this. Did I already talk about we're trying to do a MLSC, a women's initiative to tell the story? Did I already tell that story? Okay. So, but I think that's part of it is it's on us to tell our story better and the impact that we're doing and the programs that are out there. The Jays have that through their foundation, the program that Lauren's talking about, but MLSC has so many programs that are doing or impacting the communities that we live in very similarly. I can even spit out even very similarly. So I think we are changing. Like I think the things we're doing right now are changing what the sports industry, especially for women, is going to be in the next 5-10 years. Like I think we're doing those things. So I'm really excited to see what that change is going to be. I already see it though, especially with participants. So this is in the States very much so. Title IX passed, I think, in 70, right? 69, 70? I can't remember exactly.
Around that time,
yeah, around that time. So we're now the people that are participating are really the first generation where their mothers were also participants. So it's making a huge difference, I think. I don't have any statistics like what you said to back it up, but I really think it is making a difference when people's mothers were able to participate and be part of sport, and they were fans from the very beginning, and they had people that they looked up to. So I think that has had a huge impact on sports and the women's role in sport, and I think it will continue to have, because now not only are girls participating, but they're elite level athletes that we're talking about today. So I think it will continue, and honestly, a lot of things just take time. Unfortunately, like the Olympics started in Greco-Roman time, and it was only men, right, competing. It took a long time for women to start competing, and I think that it just takes time to catch up, but it's our duty and kind of our role to make sure that we continue on that path of progress.
And on that note, that's our panel discussion. Did you want to stand there? Or?
Yeah.
Yes? Okay.
And I'll bring the mic over.
Okay, fine.
Okay, obviously panel discussion. I called them the power panel. I think they lived up to the reputation. So thank you so much for all your insight, the inspiration across a bunch of different industries, but obviously a lot of people on the same path that have gone through some of the same things. We really want to open up the questions to you on the floor. If you have any questions for our panelists, for one of them, all of them, feel free. And I see Andre over there, so I'm going to bring this over to you.
Hi there. I actually work at CBC Sports. My name is Andre. Kayla, you just said that words are important. So I'm really curious to know your take on a tendency to call women athletes girls. We always talk about the men's team, and then we talk about the girls. And I'm really curious to understand a little bit about your take as a broadcaster, but if I'm the only one that sort of wonders about why we do that.
Absolutely. I think that our wording as journalists is super important. And yeah, we do tend to always say girls or for a female or female athlete, fill in the blank. And I think we need to get to a point where we eliminate that because it's weird. And frankly, it takes up way too much room when you're reading it in a script. Like,
Or tweeting.
Or tweeting. But I feel as though it highlights for some people as if we're some kind of sore thumb or as if we're that odd thing that's not supposed to be there. So I think even if it's casual, and listen, I'm not going to sit here and say like men say this and whatever. I think that it's all in us. Like we all do it and I do it. And I think that that's why these conversations are so important. And I thank you again for having this panel because it's really a check yourself. Like you really need to when you go home, how you're talking to people, how you're engaging with people, what are you saying to them? What are people saying to you and kind of moving forward from that. So yeah.
One of my pet peeves is ladies, and it's ladies figure skating. A lot of the ski federation often has ladies slalom, whatever. That's how they that's the word they use. And there was a legendary CBC female producer, Jo Mead, and she was really gruff and she was a character, right? And it was years ago. Joan's been dead now about 15 years, but she said, "I'm no lady, and I'm not calling anyone else a lady." But anyway, yes, no, don't ever say ladies, the ladies figure skating competition or whatever.
Does anyone else have a question? Oh, we've got a bunch of eager people.
Who was first?
Really
Oh, all right.
Okay, so I'm currently a sports reporter for my school paper at McMaster, and I find it really hard to get people to read the sports section. They say if they read the sports section, they don't read anything else. If they read everything else, they don't read the sports section. And a big passion of mine is creating content, visual content for social media and visual media. To not really just talk about stats, but the players beyond the stats. I like watching videos of the players pranking each other and stuff like that because I feel like that really interacts people who wouldn't typically read sports. So, but what I'm finding challenging is getting my sports editor, who is a man, to listen to my concerns when it's not about stats or how did the game go kind of thing. So how do you think I should approach that issue and try and make it move forward, I guess?
Who wants to take that?
I used to work at a place, CFCF in Montreal, CTV station, and my sports director wanted nothing but a minute 30 report on the Canadians or the Expos and what had happened. And once I did this story, I'd like to do more the human interest story. I remember one story I did was on the what do you call it, the songs they play before the players go up. The walk-up songs. Well, thank you. The walk-up songs. And he goes, "Jesus Christ, what are you doing?" He goes, "I don't want that shit on my station." He was just incensed that I would do anything that, expose maybe some of the personality of the player, and any sort of thing like that. Yes, just some people just don't buy it. That's not what they want to see. But if it's a compelling story and you tell a great human interest story about someone, maybe the walk-up song wasn't the greatest example for a feature, but if it's a compelling story about one of the athletes, I don't see how he can't agree that that's something that you just got to just show him that that's something that people would be interested in and a different side other than the stats. But it is hard. I must admit, shortly after that, I did leave to move to the CBC because I did know that they value that sort of storytelling, where at the private station at CTV, it wasn't something that they wanted, so I did leave.
Yeah, I think one thing that we have to shout out CBC for is the stories that they do tell. They're like none, especially when you are trying to get familiar with new athletes and Olympians, and I think that they do a fantastic job doing so. Maybe his concern could be the viral aspect of things these days. I feel as though everyone wants like a quick 30-second clip that's going to go viral, and then you don't even care about it next week. And that's kind of like a challenge where I find sometimes is like, okay, well, here's this viral clip that you put out, but what's the true story behind it, and why are people going to hold on to it? And I think just like finding that relation between the two, and like you said, I personally hate stats. I think that they help and they help give context, but I just sometimes I rather hear about, you know, like as Isaiah Thomas' story and kind of like his bounce back after he lost his sister, and those stories speak to me a little bit more than like so and so's more efficient when they lead off with their right foot. Like, but some people love that stuff,
Yep.
and that's not a knock at them at all. It's just kind of finding that healthy balance.
I would just say, like, find your own platform to tell your story. That's the one great thing right now is, like, yeah, great that you're writing for the paper. Definitely do that. But there's so many other outlets where you can tell your story the way you want to. Like, that's what's great about social media. That's what's great about the age we're living in right now.
Hi, my name is Isabel. Like, I really like football, so I just wanted to know, like, can be addressed to anyone, but what was your, like, initial reaction of Cam Newton's comment about the female reporter and how he found it funny that she was talking about running routes?
Everybody's familiar with that story?
I am. Well,
Yeah.
I'll say, like, you know, from time to time we'll see
Yeah,
people.
you take one. You take
Yeah,
one.
yeah. I'm
You've
just
been
sitting
shooting
here.
out questions all night. It's your turn.
I was gonna say, I mean, there's a lot of the times, you know, we're seeing athletes, male athletes. Unfortunately, there's a lot of gaffes. There's a lot of things people say out of context, or, you know, they're saying something and not really looking at, you know, there are people there in the audience looking at you. I think as much as it was sensationalized, I think really the takeaway is the learning moment. I think, you know, for the NFL, the organization, or other male athletes to see that wasn't appropriate. So, you know, unfortunately, Cam Newton, that was his mistake, but I think that we have to look at the takeaways from those type of incidences and not just how viral it went. I think that it was a great learning experience for everybody, just to know that when you're talking to journalists, treat them as a journalist, not by their gender, and respond to their questions. It was a valid question, and unfortunately, you know, he dropped the ball on that one. But I think the takeaway is the learning experience. Anybody want to add to that?
I mean, I've gotten in trouble for saying whatever I feel about it, but I think what was so disappointing for me was his like laugh well before the question was even out of her mouth. Do you know what I'm saying? Like, and I think that yes, we still have a ways to go with people kind of not being able to just get past this before they listen to what comes out of here, and yeah, it does take, you know, as you said, takeaways and learning, and the question was good. And you know what? The thing with Cam Newton was a huge thing about him coming into the league was whether or not he could read plays or learn schemes, and he was supposed to be like a one-trick pony. He could have used that opportunity to show that, yeah, I can also talk about routes too. So I just feel as though, yeah, it was just a huge miss for me. It's a hot mess.
Next question.
Let's go in the back. Can I go here and direct over here? All right, here you go.
Hi, my name is Deidre. My question is for Lauren. You said you went to work at a receptionist job for an hour only each day, and I work a receptionist job now, and some days I just want to rip the dishwasher out and Hercules it across the office. So my question to you is, did you wake up and decide to be in a joyful mood and to march forward and take the day? Like, how'd you get, what'd you do? Just give me something.
I was actually in the receptionist job at the organization I wanted to work for, so that was helpful, but I didn't want to be the receptionist. I knew that it was my foot in the door, and especially in the nonprofit world, anyone here who works in nonprofit will know that it is a long, long, long process to get where you want to go. I think I worked for free for about a year, and I lived in my parents' house until they were like, you need to get paid. Like, this is too much, and it was way too long. It went on for way too long, but the point was that I really wanted to work there, And I wanted to prove to the people there that I was hardworking and that I could do the job and that I could do more, and I wanted to do more than the reception job as well. So I think any advice I have, especially I meet with tons of people all the time who are looking to get into the nonprofit world, and my advice to them is to always volunteer or be a part of the organization in some way. And that's what I did when I was doing that job. I knew that it wasn't what I wanted to do, but I knew that it could get me where I wanted to be. So if that's an opportunity for people, that's my advice. But I know that's not always an opportunity. But anytime you could volunteer, nonprofits are always looking for volunteers. There's tons of events happening. So we'd always love to have more people.
Any other questions? And then there's one in the front.
Can we go? I'll need the mic back and then we'll come.
This is for Teresa. I was just wondering what top 2 skills you would say are most invaluable in someone who has a role in sports management.
One thing that I personally, and this is a personal preference too, like I think the one thing about the sports industry is you can't go and get a law degree, or you can't go get a medical degree and be qualified for it. Like, the makeup of the team depends, who's already there, and their skills dictate that next person who's going to fit in there. So there is no one answer or one path, which is what also makes this industry so great. So, okay, that's a preface. But the things that I personally look for is I look for people who are creative in their problem solving. So all we do every day is solve problems, right? We're just always constantly bombarded by fire drills, especially in sports and events. So what I look for in people is somebody who is going to think outside the box and is going to come to me with a solution. Everybody knows how to identify a problem. That's easy. But who's going to come to me with a solution and be very inquisitive about it and ask the right questions to get it done? And the second invaluable skill, I think, is just the ability to just be a great person to be around. I mean, it sounds so simple, but in this industry, especially for me in the Raptors front office, we spend an inordinate amount of time together. And you don't want to be stuck in a room for 12 hours for 5 straight days with somebody you can't stand. They could be the smartest person in the world, but it doesn't matter because they can't have a dialogue. They can't be flexible, and they can't crack a joke. Like, you don't want to be around people like that. So bring a positive attitude and bring solutions, I think, are 2 invaluable skills of people that I want to work with.
There's a question in the front.
Can I go back here first and then come in front?
Hello. My question's for the entire panel or anyone who wishes to answer. I'm currently working at a tech incubator where there's a lot of up-and-coming emerging sports techs, as well as done some work coaching some grassroots soccer. And in both, I've noticed a lot of initiatives pushing for women-only type programming. And unfortunately, I've found a lot of struggle happening in that, and I just kind of want to see kind of your perspective on that, or like best practices for success in those areas, or if there's a way to help better the programmings that are happening, or if there's another route that women should go.
Sure, I'll try and answer it the best I can, but I think our Girls at Bat program is brand new. It launched last year, so I can speak to that a little bit from a new program perspective. And before we do any programs at Jay's Care, we do tons and tons of research. So we look at community needs and suggestions. We do a ton of consultation with communities that we're working in so that we get their feedback integrated into the program, and we're not just going to them and saying this is how your program's going to work, but it's really a big need of each community. We do tons of research on best practices, so girls-only programs, or I'm saying girls now, I'm supposed to say women, but we are working with girls. Girls-only programs that have been successful, and also guiding principles for what can be a successful program. So it's tough. The program that we launched last year has actually gone through tons of transformations in the last year. I think a program is only good as the staff that are running it that are open to adapting it as it goes as well. And if that's the programming that you guys are going to be doing as well, open to learning from it and changing it as it goes and getting tons of feedback and interest from people that are involved in it too. I don't know if that answers your question.
I'd like to add something to that too. At my last She's for Sports event, we had a panelist who works in marketing, but she is still an athlete, and she works for an app called Open Sports, I believe. I think it's just good to get in touch with people that are either in the tech space or providing programming to women and girls and doing what you're doing. And sometimes all it takes is a call and a coffee, right? Oh yeah, so that's great. So you're already connected. And I know another website, I think it's called Fit Spirit. That's another campaign to get girls engaged in sports, because I know there's the stats about them dropping out at around puberty. So I'd say, you talked about research, look who's already in that space and connect with them. I don't think that these days people love to collaborate. So maybe there's something that they can, help you with, and maybe you can help them with something as well.
Thanks. Hi, my name's Natalie. Really what I wanted to do is, you talked earlier about how do we engage women in sport, and then you specifically called out the media. And I'm going to full disclosure, because I did work in the media for quite a long time. I want to switch that just a little bit and say, vote with your wallets. The reality is media is run by advertising, and advertisers make a lot of the decisions on what they advertise on based on ratings, so on and so forth. So what I'm saying is, when we, and I was part of the coverage for the FIFA Women's World Cup, we were laughed out of boardrooms when we were told the audiences that we projected and how we were going to cover it, and it was going to be like any other World Cup, even though it was a home World Cup, obviously. And I can tell you that they did not take us seriously. They did not want to participate in it until we finally got Coca-Cola on board in a big way, and they actually took the trophy across the country. And again, exactly the same coverage that was given to the men's event, shattered every record, 600% audiences delivered, etc. I'm going to push it back to corporate to say the media can only do what they can do. They have to air the programming that delivers the audiences that the advertisers ask for. Vote with your wallet. That is what's going to create some real change.
Any additional comments? Well said. Any additional comments?
Well, I was going to say, obviously on this panel, you don't see anybody here on the sponsorship side, and I was trying to get somebody, but that didn't work. But I mean, you could sort of see what's going on out there. You have the big guys like Coca-Cola, McDonald's, but then you also see other companies like the Dairy Farmers of Canada and what they're doing to engage women in sports, as you said, with sponsorships. So there are companies doing a great job, and they get it, they see it, and then there are the big ones, as you said, that they have all the money, all the capital, and if you can get them under your belt, then you're that's great. But I love your message about vote with your wallet.
Is it weird that I have a question? I think it just sparked from yours. I'm just curious. I don't know if anyone. Well, we're all in a room with mostly women. It's just. Do you feel more comfortable being in a room with mostly women? Is that kind of is it supposed to be sort of maybe women feel targeted when it's always women only, or is it or do we want a seat at the table with whomever's there? And I don't know, that was just a question that came to my mind of when it comes to marketing certain things. I love going to a women's only gym, but I also love going to a co-ed gym. And I think that sometimes when it comes to marketing things, maybe Lauren, you can speak to this. Some people kind of feel singled out, okay, well, I'm only here just because, and that's why we're grouped together. I don't know, maybe that might further if you're asking anyone or surveying anyone for your app ideas.
No, that's great. Anybody else?
Yeah.
Hi. Oops. Sorry. I should put this away. My name is Kashif. I just want to say you guys are great. The six of you here, the four panelists and Signa and Anka, you guys to set this up is amazing. And coming as a male, you just to your point, I'm here empowered as a male listening to you. So thank you for that. You guys do a great job in your respective fields, and we see it. My question is, I'm also here representing my 14-year-old daughter. So she actually couldn't be here because she had homework to do, but she wanted me to snap some stuff, so I was trying to do it, but I didn't want to be rude. You know, from her standpoint, I live vicariously through her. And the thing that she asks me all the time that we haven't discussed is the gender wage gap, and it still exists. She's always asking me, why are ladies, women, girls, paid less than men in whatever field it is? And we have some long conversations on that, but and that could be another story. But I want to hear your thoughts and how you feel about the wage gap that still exists and why it still exists, and why is there a problem where we see, Teresa, you in a high-level executive position with the Raptors. Kayla, you're on TV, you know, you're doing radio. Brenda, you've been in the industry for so long and so successful at what you do. And Lauren, and what you've accomplished so far with the J. Why is there still a gender wage gap?
I can take that one. I mean, I did kind of highlight the push from the women's U.S. soccer team and the women's U.S. national team for equal pay. I think that's where we have to keep on doing. I mean, we see the problem out there. Some people can sit back and say it's never going to change. I think we have to amplify that. We have to push. We have to talk about it and get it out there. I think that's kind of the only way. I am encouraged though, because I do a lot of reading. When I see, like, I read the other day in an article that it was the Norway Football Association, how they were planning on paying men and women the same pay. So there are places that are looking at this and saying, we got to get this right. I don't think that we're in a place where it's all really bad and it's all really good. I think there are some leagues and some areas where people are like, you know, we have to change this. But just as Teresa mentioned, change, unfortunately, is really slow. But I am encouraged when I hear things like that and I read about it. I don't know if anybody else wants.
Well, I think it's the decision makers have to make those decisions. So, I mean, those are the people we have to talk to. I mean, I know, as I'm kind of the HR person for my department, so I know what everybody gets paid. I see everybody's contract. There's no gender pay gap in the Raptors. But that's a decision that Masai and ownership has made as they're hiring these people. So you have to have a conversation at that level. And if you're not having the conversation at that level, you're not making a difference. So I think that's where we fall short a lot of times, is we can have that that discussion, but if we're not reaching the decision makers or hearing from them, then it's not going to change. I think another thing that that doesn't really happen in society, but just like generally, people don't talk about what they get paid, right? Nobody asks. Nobody, you know, it's not general knowledge. Like, maybe if everybody what they got paid was out there, it might be a little more equal, right? So that's obviously way above what my influence is going to be. But I ultimately, like, that's what we have to get to. I was listening to, I wish I could remember the guy's name, but he actually worked for a company. He started a company, and that they actually did that. So it was a big company. It was some sort of manufacturing, and they did a lot of very interesting things. One thing was you never interviewed for a job. You just come and hang out at the company and made sure it was a good fit for you before you even interviewed with anybody. You were voted on by the people that reported to you on if you were doing a good job in your leadership role. If not, you weren't a leader anymore. And he's like, it's probably the reason I haven't been CEO of my own company for 10 years. It was very interesting. It's a TED Talk, so everybody can find it if you can remember the name. But he actually did that. His whole company, they had, you know, thousands of employees, and they had the different areas. And anywhere there was a headquarters, if you were an employee of that company, you could see what anybody else paid in that whole company. So I think that might make a difference.
And I agree. I think transparency is a huge factor in kind of initiating and kind of being that big boost. But I also think with change comes demand. I struggled with it a lot, was asking. There are some things that I've done that I probably should have got paid for, but I never asked. And I feel like some people might not feel confident, and I for sure did not feel confident enough to go up to my bosses and being like, hey, I gotta get paid for the work that I'm doing at, you know, various outlets. But, you know, I have noticed that, like, sometimes with internships, women last longer as interns than men do at certain places because men will just be brought on. And think that it's time that we start demanding and asking, and that comes with self-worth and knowing your worth, and don't let anyone play you. Like, know that when you go to work you need to get paid unless it is an internship, and asking, don't be scared to ask for a raise if you feel that you deserve the raise.
Yeah, it's always hard to ask. I know. It's brutal. I remember I went in to ask for a relatively small wage hike at one point, and Scott Moore, who now is in charge of Sportsnet, was my boss at the time, so he called me in, and it was, I don't know, $5,000 or something, and he goes, "No, we can't give it to you." And I was like, "Oh man, really? Like, God, this is my, my bare minimum." He goes, "We're going to give you 4 times that." And he goes, "And don't be happy." He goes, "You're still making way less than the guys." But I mean, I still thank him for that, though. But no, just look in sport, right? The only sport, am I wrong, where there's parity for prize money in professional sport is tennis, right? Yeah. And surfing? Well, there you go. Okay, 2 sports. But our Olympic athletes get paid by the government as a paltry amount. But anyways, the same as men, so there's wage parity there. But that's only 2 examples I can really think of where there is that.
Hopefully we're moving forward.
Kick in. Like with Olympians and certain athletes, sponsors kick in, and that can kind of make things unbalanced.
Okay. I think we have time for one last question, and I see
a hand over here. So one last question here.
I know she came to my first event.
Okay, so my name is Anessa, and I'm 9 years old. And my question is for anyone who will answer it. And my question is, what age did you start getting into sports? And I would like to organize a path. I'd like to wait, what was I gonna say? I was gonna wait. Oh yeah, I was gonna. What?
we can answer her first question.
Bring someone in to talk to the girls in my school, and yeah.
Okay, so 2 things. One was, what age did you know that you liked sports? Is that the first one? And the second one is, if one of us can go to her school to talk to the girls at her school.
I would totally come to your school. I don't think it was ever a question. I don't even remember a time in my life when I didn't play sports. I've played sports for my whole life. I have an older brother and I have a younger brother. So similar to everybody's story, they would practice all of their sports with me and on me. And I was actually part of the first ever girls hockey team that started. I'm from Oshawa, and I was in grade 2, I think, and my brothers played hockey, and there was no hockey league for me to play in. So I banded together, my mom banded together with a bunch of other moms from schools around that she knew, and me and my friends became the first girls hockey team in Oshawa. And it's now a huge league with multiple teams and multiple divisions. And that just sort of spiraled to tons of other sports that I play now. So you don't just have to play one sport. You can play lots of different sports and choose which one you like the best. It's good to get a taste of everything, and then you can figure out what you want to do most. But you can start when you're really young, or you can start when you're old. It doesn't really matter, as long as you love it.
Yeah, and I started, figure skating, and anyway, I wasn't much of a figure skater. But basketball and volleyball and everything. I remember in grade 8, the coach of the boys wrestling team said, I think you'd be a good wrestler. So I was the only girl on the boys wrestling team, and we went to one other school where there was another girl, and she was about half my size. So I dominated. I'm 10-0. So that was back in 1971. So I could have been a contender. But anyways, no. But the sport's something. It's great. I still compete in triathlons today. I'm not very good. I'm really slow. But you know what? The one thing as a woman, it's all up here, right? So I do Ironman triathlons, which are really long triathlons. But you know what? At the end of the run, I am going by guys that are about 30 years old, 35 years old, and I'm 57, and they're just mentally weak. So even if you're physically weak, you can beat them that way. So.
Yeah, I think same with Lauren. Like I've always loved sports growing up, and I was really tried to be athletic. I'm not good now. Don't invite me to a pickup game. But when I knew I fell in love with sports media is I spent a ton of time growing up with my grandparents. And my grandma would always have on the Blue Jays games on, but she would have them on mute. And my grandpa would have the Jays games on the radio and just blast it. Like every game, there was always a knock on the door, like, Val, turn that thing down. And I just remember like being there with them and just watching and waiting and watching and more waiting, because baseball, that does happen. But something really fascinating would happen, and my heart would beat super, super, super fast, and I would just smile, and my grandparents were smiling. I'm like, oh my God, we're all smiling. Like, what's going on? And then I just realized, like, from there, like, I don't know how I'm going to be a part of this, but I got to be a part of it. And that's how I fell in love with it.
What grade are you in? 4, okay. I am not very good at numbers. So in fourth grade, I went to my very, very first sports camp. So I had never played anything organized until the summer before my 4th grade year. So I just played for fun. So I had 2 brothers and a sister, and we would make teams. It would be girls against boys most of the time. That's only because my brothers were oldest and youngest, so it was actually pretty equal. And we would just play all kinds of sports. We never did anything organized. So I think don't worry if you aren't on an organized team or if you aren't going to a special class. You can still play sports and have fun. I think that's one thing that a lot of kids don't get a chance to do anymore. So make sure you have fun all the time. Play whatever sport you want. As far as going to your school, I'd love to go to your school. So you just need to let me know where it is, okay?
Her dad.
Thank you for bringing her.
Yeah. I can honestly say that she showed up at my first She's4Sports event, and it's awesome that you're back and your dad's back here with you. When her dad reached out to me on Facebook, he said, I want to bring her to your event because I want her to be around role models. And this is sort of the power of just, holding these events, bringing women like the panels together to have these discussions. So thanks again for coming. I would say for myself very quickly, I did track in primary school, and I also did volleyball all the way up till OAC. I love volleyball. And a friend or so could get me out once in a while to go to the beaches in the summer if there's a volleyball, they're short a member or something and they need someone to just play some pickup volleyball. But again, like the panelist said, engage in different sports and see what you like. There's so much out there. I had an uncle who really, really liked NASCAR racing and would get my sister and I to videotape it when we had VCRs when he couldn't watch it. So, even a sport like that, NASCAR, you're just these cars are going around and around. But there's just so much out there that, it can be involved in a lot of different sports.
I think we are done with some questions. So I guess, obviously great questions here, great discussion by the panel. And we also have a little contest. There is the matter of the contest, the Raptors 905 tickets. And I'm told that Anne-Marie Zawadzki, is that how I say your last name? I know you are on the blue shirt, so you are the winner of those tickets. So you can come see us afterward for bringing your social game and your questions tonight. And again, we just want to say thanks so much for joining us. We know it was a little bit of a delay getting here with the traffic and everything, but I think it was well worth the while. One more thing.
Yeah, sure.
Oh.
Surprise. So not only is Anne-Marie win tickets to opening night, which you'll get a replica championship ring. Congratulations. But you'll also get an email, and it's a personal code from me, Teresa 905, that you can get discount to any 905 game this year. So you'll be getting that in an email. Yeah. So if you can make an opener, come check it out. I'm actually very, very proud of the D-League champions, now the G League, but we were the very final D-League champions last year. And it's very exciting atmosphere. And I hope you all can join us for a game this season. And since they didn't take away the microphone,
she's on a roll.
Actually, I think I mentioned the MLSC's Women Initiative, but we're launching a speaker series ourselves. So we're going to try to do it every other month, and our first one is actually Monday. So in the same email with your code for discount to game tickets, we'll also have a code to register for that event if you want. And we're really just going to be celebrating the women that lead the Raptors. Some of my colleagues are here right now, but as I mentioned, I think there's 10 different people that work in our front office that touch different areas of the sport, from our medical team to analytics to media, front office. So we have a great array, and I don't think a lot of people know them. So we're gonna definitely talk about them and celebrate them.
One thing I want to mention, and I'm glad you touched on that, is sometimes when I do talk to young people, they think for them to get into sports, the broadcasting side is the only way. Now, you've seen a panel of women who work in different industries of sports. There's a lot of stuff out there. If you know somebody that's in a job that you like, shadow them, meet them for coffee, because there's a lot of women working in sports in the front office, as athletes, as coaches, working for foundations, and there's a lot of talent out there. So you can be a part of the sporting world, even if you're not specifically going into it on the broadcasting side. And with that, I want to thank the lovely panelists. I have a little token for you guys. There we go. One for you.
As Ianka hands all this stuff out to our panel, we just also want to say you can follow anything that you maybe thought of was caught your brain tonight. You can go to the She's4Sport, all their social platforms on Twitter, Instagram, YouTube, and also CBC Sports. We've been doing that as well on all of our platforms, plus Snapchat, I believe, Andre, but I'm not sure. Yes? No? Nobody's been snapping tonight? Hey, that's okay. We got all the other ones covered, so it's fine. We just want to say thanks again to our panel, Teresa Resch, Kayla Grey, Brenda Irving, and Lauren Simeson. Thanks so much for joining us. And Ianka and She's4Sport for having this event tonight. Greg Stremlaw, thank you very much from CBC Sports for making this happen. And to all of you for coming and engaging with us tonight.
And I want to say thanks so much, Signa, for being our awesome MC.